I watched 100 games on height and learned everything I should and shouldn't do when playing it. I'm going to go over the fundamentals, more advanced tips, and some pro strategies that you can implement in your game regardless of the meta. No matter your skill level, I guarantee there's something you can learn from this video. Some people never play height and adopt a mid to low ground playstyle which they find more consistent and less risky. And there's some truth to this, however, knowing how to play height is an important skill to have, especially in open tournaments. I'm going to break down the fundamentals of holding height step by step, then move into more advanced strategies and techniques pros use. We're going to start with taking height on first moving. In a lot of cases where first moving pulls determines who gets height to start. That's why you see a lot of teams built up on half and half, because if they pull moving, they are already established and would be difficult to take it from them. There are two factors you need to consider before investing on half. One, your mat count, and two, the players around you. Of the games I watched, only a handful of teams go up without 130 builds or some sort of mobility and be successful in holding height for a long period of time. You also need to notice whether there's already a team that has invested builds close to you. If you try to build too close to a team who is already set up to play height on 5th zone, you'll become a target and sprayed. But sometimes there is no team who invested the mats on half and you could build up for free. Other times zones pulls where no one built up and you could rotate early and build up yourself. Whether or not you pull zone is completely RNG, but if you have the mats, it's worth building up. Some teams try to instant crank if zone pulls on them so they don't have to waste mats in the event that zone doesn't pull on them, and sometimes it works, and other times teams who built up can either pressure them down or build over them since they had a stronger position to hold height. In this clip you can see that Macwood waited to see if he pulled zone to instant crank, but Aviv and Pump already built up and were able to block them off and hold height even though they didn't fully pull zone. Next thing is playing moving zones. First moving zone is when most teams look up at height, so it's very important that you stay ahead and well established by connecting to other teams and or double layering your hard mats. I'll get into more specific ways to tarp later in the video. It's very common for teams to try to get ahead of zone and attempt to spray and build up to take height. However, if you're always ahead and well connected, you cannot get sprayed out. It's important that one player is playing back on height, ensuring they aren't getting sprayed out and pressuring high layered teams that try to get ahead and take height, while the other is tarping ahead and looking backside for any storm plays or potential kills. You want to make sure you aren't too high up where you can't put effective pressure down and grab loot when you need it. In later zones you should be pretty established and only have to worry about storm plays and pressuring second heights to fight lower layers until it comes down to a 2v2 situation where you could either fight or play heal off in more stat games. This is a simplified version of what a game from height would look like, and of course you would need to get your refreshes to ensure you have enough mats and ammo to be able to fight off teams who try to take height, but these are the basics of holding height from first moving to the end of the game. Taking height is also pretty straightforward. Once you get a refresh or a lot of mats on the mid ground layer, begin elevating and tarping on the high layer. You could then try to spray out height and build up for it. You could also try to look for angles of beam height and build up while they're weak. If height is being played well, you might not be able to take it right away and you shouldn't force it. I highly recommend you don't force taking height by build fighting without a major damage advantage or mat advantage, because what typically happens is you burn a lot of mats and you get behind on zone and another team gets ahead and chops both of you out and fully griefs your game. Learning to stay patient and play your layer and consistently grief height until you have a chance to take it, whether that's knocking a player or realizing you have the mat advantage because they're tarping cheaply in wood, will ensure that you can take height cleanly without griefing your game. Now that I've covered the basics, I'm going to go more into depth with each part of the game, starting with tarping. Tarping styles vary between pros, but I've picked up patterns from each of them. The general rules are double layer or double tarp hards at the beginning of first moving and when you're playing too high to connect to anything. Tarp ahead and single layer hards and connect to tarps below you, and double layer wood even when connecting. These are used by every pro and it makes sense why. At the beginning of first moving, you have a lot of people who will try to get ahead and spray you out. You have to cover a lot of ground on first moving and won't be able to reinforce layers that are in zone, so you want to make height as established as possible, and the best way to do that is by connecting and double layering. When tarping, you need to be very aware of zones that pull on and off elevation so you can adjust accordingly. If a zone pulls down and you just tarp without moving down layers, you are not only in a really ineffective position, but you're also in a really easy position to get chopped since you can't connect to anyone. Make sure you don't drop too low either, since someone could be lurking back zone who could either take height from you or hit you really hard. One small thing I noticed pros doing when dropping layers is putting a backward stair and reinforcing it with a wall and floor, especially in wood since you can't simply double layer it like you can a cone in a floor. Next we have getting refreshes. These are pretty straightforward, and the most common way to kill people is backside with your AR and drop on it. You have to be careful when dropping on it since there's usually some kids lurking back there. Most of the people I bought had Spider-Mans and were able to grapple the loot, but if you don't have Spider-Mans or they aren't in the game, you could always use a harpoon if you have one. Another thing teams do is have the tarper ahead of zone and spray at the walls of a second height team while the other drops and smacks on their walls or tops and kills them. In later zones, and something I saw Epic Whale and Reed do all the time, is drop down on a stair and pre at the second height. They are often surprised and have low time to react before this happens, and usually results in a free refresh. If you find yourself struggling to get refreshes, you should make sure you're playing a low enough layer, watching backside, and not be scared to smack on tops and walls, and just be careful that you don't get snuck up on. Tunnel visioning is a big reason why people die on height. Always make sure you're aware of storm plays, second height teams, and angles you might be exposed from while spraying people. One part of playing height that shouldn't be overlooked is closing out the game. It's not really as much of a strategy as it is common sense, but I figured I should cover it just in case you wondered how pros do it. The goal is to force players down layers until you have yourself in the top 2 situation, and always watch out for storm plays. In low elo lobbies, pros are trying to get as many kills as possible, so they drop down on second heights tops and pressure them while playing very aggressive. In more stack lobbies, you might find it going into a heal off. When setting up for a heal off, you want to give the person with more white health all your heals, obviously. And hard mats, then drop and force any last teams to fight, then try to kill or grief the last team before they heal themselves. In this clip, Pump did a good job of griefing the kid with all the heals, so even when he died, his teammate won the heal off because the other kid's teammate had none of the heals. Last but not least, we have taking height. I already covered the basics of how to take height, but I'm gonna go over it with examples of good height takes. This first example is from Queasy and Vino. They're playing mid-ground and get 2 refreshes, and their mats are really good, so Queasy immediately begins to elevate and put them on a high layer ahead of zone, and they see 2 teams build fighting and spray one out and build over the rest. Unfortunately, Vino dropped his AR while looting a kill earlier, so he was unable to put pressure down and had to drop on walls and dies, and Queasy follows short after. This example was mainly to show how they're able to get mats, elevate, and look for height and successfully take it. Another example of this is from Casca and Except, tarping and looking at height and spraying it out, then getting ahead and spraying it out again. Being patient and continually griefing height allowed them to take it while burning few mats. In this example, Alex and Bailey saw that height was playing low and the player backside was focused on a team under them, so they took the opportunity to sneak the front kid and build over height. This play won't work all the time if the height team has good awareness and stays up higher, but it's not a bad play to have in mind. The last height take I'm going to show is one done consistently by Cami Assetti, and it's done so well that they won 3 out of 6 games in finals using this. Alright, they play low ground at the start until they get a refresh, then once they have the mats, they make a full tarp directly under height. Cami goes towards the back of tarp and sprays out height far back in zone where they can't reconnect or notice that they're getting chopped. He breaks out anywhere else they may be connected, then instantly builds up on backside, while Seti waits for the chop out and instantly builds up on front side, and then they kill the old height team or pressure them until they go down. In this particular example, the height team didn't seem to know what they were doing and were playing an extremely high layer to begin with, so I'll show another example to show that this strategy works consistently. This game they were on a low layer and didn't get a refresh and just grappled mats, but they made this tarp under height again, and just like last time, Cami goes back and shoots it really far back and breaks out where they connected over them, and they had no clue that they were even getting chopped. Cami and Seti don't force height right after they chop, and Spider-Man ahead to build up. Cami takes some pretty heavy damage due to some bad awareness while trying to chop out height again, but Seti was able to build up and take height untouched. This strategy works so well since it's hard for height to see what's directly under them, and shooting really far back in zone doesn't really draw attention to the fact that they're getting dropped. That's it for this video. My notes for the 100 games are in the description if you want to check it out. It's nothing too special, but you can see that there was a lot of time put into this video. So if you enjoyed or learned something new, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to support me even more, use code Howl when buying the Battle Pass or any skins from the item shop. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.